Hello and welcome to stage 9 of the Tour de France. We're finally into the mountains and picking things up a long way from the finish. Still a bit early in the morning, in fact, because we're still early on in this stage. So the broadcast team's still waking up, with the riders already off and running. These are the two survivors of the breakaway. It was a group of 6 that first went up the road, but now it's just George Hincapie, the King of the Mountains leader, and Gert-Jan Teunissen, the little climber for Zulu Kingdom, who's also last place in the Tour de France. And 56 survivors in the main peloton. They've already gone over the Col d'Aubis, and that caused a major sorting out. Only a group of 10 cresting that climb together, but things coming back as a group on the descent. And Ceramicas Kelme doing a lot of the work in the valley, Lech Piasecki doing a big turn at the front of the group. And now we are on to the Col du Tourmalet, one of the most famous mountains in the Tour de France. It was the first great mountain ever introduced in the race back in 1910, the first time the Tour de France went into the Pyrenees, and it's earned its legendary status ever since. And this is an attack that has just gone off the front of the peloton. It's Pierre Rodrigo of the Leftovers, and Martin Emilio Rodriguez looking to cross the gap, and Philippe Gilbert also of Adidas. So after the first breakaway riders, many of them caught, a few others looking to go up the road. I think they'll be able to join the leaders the way things are going. Yellow jersey of Julien Alaphilippe. I wouldn't put it past him to defend his lead today. He's been so strong all season. He's impressed on all forms of terrain. And he rode a really spectacular time trial back on stage 7. So he certainly seems to be on great form. Riders already dropped from the group. Jared Niederman, his time is about done at the front of the race. Caught a glimpse of the sprinter Andre Dargaud as well. Dargaud is quite a good climber for a sprinter, and he certainly has that going for him in his fight for the green jersey. And some managers predicting that Mario Cipollini will not be finishing this stage today, being the first rider eliminated from the Tour de France. So the elimination time and the riders at the very back of the race, ones to keep an eye on. Still 10 kilometers from the top, and the recent attackers have joined George Hincapie and Gert-Jan Teunissen. But the pace has slowed at the front of the peloton. When we first picked up the broadcast, those 2 breakaway riders had only a 1 minute's lead over the peloton, and now it's out over 4.5 minutes. So it seems the peloton is content to let these riders go. And George Hincapie and Philippe Gilbert the best position overall. Hincapie less than 5 minutes down on the yellow jersey, and Philippe Gilbert around 5.5 minutes back himself. Of course, Teunissen, he's in 80th place, that is in last, more than 28 minutes down. So he'd have to get in an awful lot of these breakaways to move up in the general classification. He's making a good start on the first mountain stage. And the polka dot jersey of George Hincapie, well, he's not really at home in the really high mountains, starting to suffer a little bit on the Tourmalet. He could still survive ahead of the peloton on this climb at least, score some points for the King of the Mountains. But I don't think he'll end up being a long-term contender because there's a lot of big climbs still to come. It's good to see Philippe Gilbert up here as well. Adidas looking for their first stage win in this Tour de France, along with some of the other teams like Evian. Have not quite reached the winner's circle yet. That was the 5K to go banner for the Col du Tourmalet. The climb gets very steep right towards the top. Should see some attacks for those King of the Mountains points. And the gap to the peloton continues to go up. It's now right around 8 minutes to the 4 leaders. George Hincapie around 6 minutes 45 seconds ahead himself. And I think this could be enough time for them to survive and win this stage. So the first move that formed on the O-Beast did not really end up surviving, as Gerrit-Jan Tönnissen, the last man left of the original 6. But the second move has gotten away from the field. The peloton is not chasing, and the gap continues to go up. It's now almost 10 minutes, so the peloton really has turned off the pace. So until the final climbs of the day, the drama will be for the stage win and the King of the Mountains points, which these guys will be sprinting for. And here comes the attack by Philippe Gilbert, looking for the King of the Mountains point on the Col du Tourmalet. It is a category 1, so it offers 10 points at the top. Tönnissen fighting back to the wheel of Gilbert, but I think Gilbert is going to take it. Tönnissen, he's been off the front the whole day, so it's understandable that he's a little bit tired. Philippe Gilbert will take maximum points, but Tönnissen is scoring well. He'll take 8 points. He's back on the wheel of Gilbert, so they will be descending together. So the long twisting hairpins descending the Col du Tourmalet. Back in the late 1980s, the British rider Sean Yates famously sped down this climb over 70 miles per hour. It was 100 kilometers per hour going downhill, and that remains the speed record measured at any point in a Tour de France. So that was a very daredevil descent by Sean Yates. Fairly accomplished rider, a great team domestique, and got to wear the yellow jersey a couple times in the Tour de France as well. Back to these guys, and Philippe Gilbert not making it easy for Gerrit-Jan Tönnissen, who is not a good descender. He's really having to grapple back onto his wheel, and his teammate Rodriguez, he's almost caught up to the 2 in front of him, so we'll have a group of 3 at the bottom of this descent, and then we'll start the category 3 climb of the Horquette Donquizon. Pierre Rodrigo, the next rider behind these 3, he's around 50 seconds down. It's not too far away. You see the provisional climbers classification in the top right. George Hincapie still with a 7 points lead, but both Tönnissen and Gilbert, I think, can mathematically take the jersey away from Hincapie if they score well on the last 3 climbs. This reminder of the scoring for the categorized climbs. A category 4, the easiest ones, and we've seen a bunch of them so far. Those offer just a single point. The category 3s, 2 points for first place and a single point for second. Category 2 climbs offer 5 points for first place. Category 1s offer 10 points. And the OR category climbs, of which there are just 3 on the route this year, those offer 20 points. So those OR category climbs, French for outside category, those will be the real points of contention for that polka dot jersey. There's George Hincapie. He's still over 10 minutes ahead of the field, so I would not put it past him to survive ahead of this peloton all the way to the finish. But 66 kilometers, a very long way to ride on your own, especially in the high mountains. But back to this group at the front, and Philippe Gilbert, who is under 6 minutes down on the yellow jersey of Julien Alaphilippe, is the virtual race leader on the road. And should this time gap remain as it is, he'll take the lead at the end of the stage with a pretty substantial time gap. So plenty to ride for Philippe Gilbert. We'll see if he can hold off the Zulu tandem and take a stage win as well. Zulu are in a great position, having 2 riders in this group. I believe they'll try and set things up for Gerrit-Jan Tönnissen using Martin Emilio Rodriguez as the foil. George Hincapie, I don't think he's quite going to get back. So once it goes uphill again, we'll start going backwards from those 4 leaders. But George Hincapie has had a wonderful season for Fiat. He's scored some impressive results in the one-day classics. He's won a stage of the Tour de France, worn the yellow jersey, worn the polka dot jersey, It was a big part of the team's success in the Tour of Switzerland as well. So perhaps the most consistent rider for Team Fiat, ahead of even Jan Ross. Gap 12 minutes now between these guys and the peloton. 5Ks to go to the top. It's the easiest climb of the day, so I don't expect these guys to split up too much. Fourquet Donquizon, a climb that's been used many times in the Tour de France, more so in the older years than recently because it's simply not quite hard enough to force things open. But there's so many mountains in this part of the Pyrenees that are very close together. The Col d'Aspin in the next valley over, very popular climb as well. Of course, we'll be descending into the valley, and then we'll start the Col d'Azay, then the Col de Peyresourde, and then descending into the famous valley of Bagnères de Luchon. Bagnères de Luchon, one of those towns that has been visited more often than any other in the Tour de France just about. So in the old days they would go there almost every year. Meanwhile, Philippe Gilbert sprinting for the King of the Mountains points. He'll take 2 more points, that'll move him up into 2nd place in the King of the Mountains competition. In the Zulu tandem, Rodriguez I think is going to take that last point. So Gilbert clearly feels great today. Looking the strongest of these 4 breakaway riders. And we've gotten a notification of an attack by Marco Pantani. I was wondering if he was going to try something on today's stage from a long way out. And he's picked an interesting time to do it near the top of the Fourquet Donquizon. I feel like he should have tried to go a little earlier on the Col du Tourmalet. He's got over 12 minutes to make up to get back to the front of the race, but Pantani, who's all the way down in 77th place by more than 25 minutes, looking to start his fight back in the general classification. So he will start his long, lonely ride in the mountains, and he's already taken over 2.5 minutes out of the peloton, who continue to ride very slowly, and that is great news for the sprinters, because I don't think anyone's going to get eliminated at this rate today. The green jersey of Jamaluddin Abdujaparov is still in that peloton. I think that says enough about how fast they're riding. We're almost at the bottom of the Col de Valeroy-Azay. Pierre Rodrigo just trying to get back on terms with these 3 again. The Col de Valeroy-Azay, perhaps most famous for its use back in 1991, when the big pre-race favorite Greg LeMond, looking for his 4th Tour de France victory, he cracked on the Col du Tourmalet, and an attack by Miguel Indurain and Claudio Chiappucci. He went off a very long way from the finish on the Tourmalet, and they finished at the top of this mountain. Chiappucci won the stage, Miguel Indurain taking the race lead, of course the big Spaniard hanging on to win his first of 5 Tours de France. That was a great display of attacking riding by those 2 riders, great rivals in the early 1990s. Rodrigo has worked very hard and he's back on terms, so once again we have 4 leaders. For how long I don't know, because Rodrigo must be getting tired. And the Col de Valeroy, very steep mountain. And Pantani, riding alone in the valley road. Not the ideal situation for a little climber, but the peloton, led by Sylvain Chavanel, treating this like a Sunday club ride through the great big mountains, and Pantani already over 5 minutes up the road. So he's just starting the climb. Gilbert doing a lot of the pacemaking on the Col de Valeroy, along with Gert-Jan Teunissen. Interesting that they're looking to set it up for Martin Emilio Rodriguez. Perhaps thinking the possibility that Gilbert and Rodriguez would have to face off in a sprint. And 2 fairly fast riders. Although Teunissen is the best climber, at least on paper. So maybe they should try and let him attack further from the finish. So a game of cat and mouse. Zulu Kingdom still with that man advantage. They ought to try and send somebody up the road over the top of this climb to make Philippe Gilbert do all of the work and chase them down. And I think Federico at this point is just along for the ride, but the leftovers have done well to send somebody up the road on a big mountain stage, and they'll be getting a good stage result. So I don't think Federico is going to get caught by Pantani, Hincapi, or anyone from the main field. Pantani taking a lot of time out of its deficit, over 8 minutes, and here comes the move by Bianchi Campagnolo. So hostilities have begun in the peloton, and it's Henny Kuiper who's well positioned in GC, and he's starting a move. So this is for Stan Ockers to force other teams to chase. Is Ockers the team leader of Bianchi Campagnolo and a long-term contender to win this race? And he's using his teammate Henny Kuiper to put the rest of the field in difficulty. Savoldelli of Kelme and Fons de Wolf leading the chase from behind. 5Ks to go to the summit for the main peloton. And this is the advantage of having two options in the general classification. Because, while you have more options, send guys up the road to force other teams to chase, and should one of your leaders have a bad day, you still have another. And the leaders have gone over the top of the Val Laurent, and Gilbert once again scoring maximum points, breaking away from the two Zulu riders. So Rodriguez and Tuniso have to work together, and Tuniso is a very bad descender, so I'm wondering if Rodriguez will have to wait for him and nurse him down this descent. And although descending not playing a huge factor in the vast majority of races, this is a situation where it really does matter. The ability to go downhill and not lose time in these small isolated groups. And Gilbert has already reached the bottom, and he's about to start the Col de Perosord. But we're going back because we have more attacks in the main peloton, and this is the situation. 12 riders have escaped because an attack has gone up by Stan Ockers, the leader of Bianchi Campagnolo, launching his first main attack of the Tour de France. It's Felicien Vervaeke leading the chase for Gösta Petersen. Henri Anglade, he's been dropped, he needs to get back on terms. Seal Guimard, Choman Peruena, and Jan Adriansens among the riders not in this group, so they have been dropped. But Reese, Petersen, Andy Schleck, Tommy Prem, Alaphilippe, they're all still there, including Mark Matteo, and that is a big surprise. But an elite group has formed. This is the main chase group that includes Choman Peruena. Looks like Santiago Botero, another rider up in the top 10, he has been dropped. So he's going to lose his place at the end of today's stage. And another split in the descent. Andy Schleck is not a very good descender, and he needs to keep that gap in check. Can't let these guys get away on the Perosord. But Stan Ockers still hasn't been brought back yet, and Alaphilippe has to do the work himself, defending his race lead, and he's also defending the interest of Tommy Prem, who's up in the 3rd place overall. There is Pantani still up the road, approaching George Hincapi, and Philippe Gilbert has not been caught yet either. Gilbert still the virtual race leader, but here comes another attack by Tommy Prem, the Swedish rider in 3rd place. And Alaphilippe has been dropped to the yellow jersey, just one mountain too far for the Frenchman. He's going to lose his lead. And another attack by Tommy Prem. Is that Kuiper who's gone with him? We'll have to wait and find out. But Tommy Prem, no, it's Stan Ockers. That's even more dangerous. And Pedro Delgado leading the chase for his leader Andrew Hampston. But Prem and Ockers, two of the main candidates to take the yellow jersey, they are being aggressive. Just 9 riders left in this group. Andy Schleck is still here, Delgado and Hampston are here, and this is Mark Matteo, who is not known as a pure climber. and he's in some elite company right now, trying to chase down Stan Ockers for Andy Schleck. And Marco Pantani, well, he's almost caught up to these riders, and I don't think he has enough road to make up more ground. But Gilbert, maintaining his distance all the way over the Persard, only now is Tunisa able to rejoin his wheel over the top. So two riders, Philippe Gilbert and Gert-Jan Tunisa, descending together into Luchon. Pantani is caught and past George Hincapie, now up with Pierre Fedrigo. And Stan Ockers has broken away from these riders. It's Bjarne Riis, Gustav Peterson, Tommy Prem, Andrew Hampsten, Mark Madio, and Andy Schleck. So that group of 6 needs to get back to this rider, Stan Ockers, who's taken 1.5 minutes out of them, and that is a big chunk of time, because these riders are close together in the overall. So Ockers free to fly downhill. And this is a big move for Stan Ockers, because he'll leapfrog all of his GC rivals in the general classification if things go as they are now. Rodriguez has almost caught up to Tunisa and Gilbert. I'm not sure why Tunisa is riding. He really should have been waiting for his teammate, because his teammate's a much better sprinter. But we're into the last kilometer, and Philippe Gilbert waiting for the moment to strike. Tunisa starts the sprint, but Gilbert is just far too explosive, and Philippe Gilbert will take the first stage win for Adidas in the Tour de France. He will also take the race lead, the new yellow jersey of the Tour. Fedrigo sprinting to 4th place and Pantani taking 5th. They were around 2 minutes down today. But the first of the big men of the Tour de France to finish is going to be Stan Ockers. Attacking on the Col de Valeron, attacking again on the Col de Persard, and that second move had no answer from anyone else in the field. A decisive move for Ockers, one that will loom large by the end of the Tour. 5.5 minutes down on the stage leaders, but watch the gap to this group right here. He's taken more than 1 minute out of this group. Bjarne Riis, Andy Schleck, and Gustav Peterson losing 1 minute to Stan Ockers on the road today. Vervaeke and Kuiper and Delgado the next across the line, so Henny Kuiper still up there in GC, another option for Bianchi. Jan Ulrich not too far away, so he'll still be up there. I think this is the group of Choman Peruena and Frank Schleck. Bit surprised to see Frank Schleck drop today, because he is an important ally for Bjarne Riis in the mountain stages. A lot of riders losing big chunks of time today, so the general classification will get turned upside down. We know that Gilbert will be the new leader, although not by very much, because the peloton really closed things down towards the end. But Mario Cipollini on track for last place, but he will comfortably finish within the time limit. So the prediction of Mario Cipollini being the first rider to go, not today. He will have at least one more day in the Tour de France, although tomorrow's mountain stage perhaps even more difficult than this one. But a triumphant day for SRAM, their big sprinters still in the race. But of course the ride of the day going to Philippe Gilbert. Winning a 2-up sprint with Gert-Jan Tunisa and Martin Emilio Rodriguez. 3rd place, just could not quite get back on the descent, and would have had a real shot at the win if Gert-Jan Tunisa had simply waited for him. Zulu Kingdom, they'll take their chances in future stages of the Tour de France. Pierre Fedrigo, 4th place for the leftovers, a great result for him. Marco Pantani, attacking a long way out, getting 5th place, stealing almost 5 minutes over the big GC men, although he's still a long way behind in that classification. Stan Ockers, his big attack, he gained 58 seconds on his big rivals today. He was in 6th place at 5 minutes 35. In the group of favorites at 6 minutes 33 seconds, which included the breakaway survivor George Hincapie, but it was Andy Schleck, Mark Madio, Andrew Hampsten, Gustav Peterson, Tommy Prem, and Bjarne Riis. Andy Schleck, I think, will be a bit disappointed with his ride today, not being able to attack and make up some of the time he lost in the time trial, because he still has a lot of work to do to make up for those losses. His teammate Mark Madio had a great race, So too did Tommy Prim, the Swedish rider, defending his high place overall. And Julian Alaphilippe really suffered on the Col de Peyresourde, finishing in 25th place, so he's lost 10 minutes and 50 seconds to the stage winner, and around 5 minutes to Stan Ockers. So he will slip down in the classification. Gilles Guimard and Santiago Botero losing big chunks of time as well. And there is the new GC, Philippe Gilbert by just 38 seconds. He's the new race leader after his great breakaway. Stan Ockers up into 2nd place. 3rd is Bjarne Riis at 1 minute 9 seconds. 4th, Tommy Prim at 1:32. So things very tight at the top of the leaderboard. 5th is Gösta Peterson at 3:01. So despite losing time on the cobbles very much in the frame, Jan Ullrich 6th at 3:54. Henny Kuiper 7th at 4 minutes 10. And Andy Schleck 4 minutes 12 seconds back. Still needs to do some attacking and get back in the frame. George Hincapie up in the top 10 in 9th place, and Julian Alaphilippe slipping from 1st to 10th, 5 minutes 12 seconds back. We'll take a look at the Lanterne Rouge. One of the sprinters will be there, and it's Mario Cipollini, the first rider to be 1 hour behind in the GC. Then Eros Poli of the leftovers, not too far behind him. Gary Antonissa coming a long way up out of that Lanterne Rouge place, so he won't be at the bottom anymore. No major changes in the green jersey competition, as Abdu Japarov still has the lead. And King of the Mountains, Philippe Gilbert, the new leader, he scored a lot of points today, overhauling George Hincapie. But we'll see if he tries to win that long term. Antonissa up there as well. In Zulu Kingdom, by virtue of having 2 riders up in that breakaway and a decent ride by Jan Ullrich, they had taken a big lead in the team competition. Adidas now 2nd in that, and Bianchi Campagnolo over 12 minutes behind in 3rd. We've got another big mountain stage tomorrow on stage 10. We'll see you next time on Plateau de Bay.